SMU fans are getting good news from EA Sports.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is Locked On SMU, our fourth edition of the show here today. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to get to that in just a second, but also there's an article from Yahoo Sports that has SMU in a pretty not good situation. And also, we are going to discuss and start our discussion of the individual position rooms for the Mustangs heading into the 2025 season. We're going to start with the safeties. But first, EA Sports gave SMU some good news. And why did EA Sports give SMU some good news? Well, if you're a video game player, EA College Football 2026 has been released today. It actually came out at midnight. So what I want to go through is some of the player rankings for SMU this year and how that's going to be beneficial to them during the season. Now, disclaimer before we get into the content today. Remember, ratings don't mean everything. We know this, but it is a really good tell. I always compare it to Vegas, right? Vegas isn't always going to tell you everything about a team. Vegas might not even be completely correct. But there are very scarce times that Vegas is far off. So when Vegas gives you something, that generally gives you a decent ballpark of where your team is going to be. Because for some reason, Vegas usually is pretty good with this. And I think player ratings are somewhat of the same. And also, it will put in somebody else's opinion than just people who cover it or, people like me. So let's go through some of the EA Sports college football rankings for 2026 for the SMU Mustangs. And if you've already looked at these, you will see right off the top is a familiar name that we talked about yesterday, and we're going to talk about more in depth later on in the show, and that is safety Isaiah Wacobia. He's a 91. But he's not the only 90s player on this team. You probably would have guessed that if there was one guy who would be a 90 overall or more, it would be Wacobia. But it's not. Logan Parr, the senior left guard, 6'4", 316 pounds, he's a 90. Kevin Jennings right behind him at 89. That's interesting. Ahmad Moses, the free safety, he's an 89. And RJ Maryland is an 89. And I want to tie this. I was going through all of this because I knew the game was coming out tomorrow. And I wanted to go through these and just see what other people thought about SMU. And what I ended up coming up with is that those rankings, I think, prove one of my points from yesterday's show. And in yesterday's show, we talked about that SMU only had 12 returning starters for the 2025 season. But my take was we got to go back beyond those starters. We got to go beyond the raw number, right? And here's my biggest takeaway of our show today and what I want to lead things off with. There are more people than just me that think SMU has the right 12 coming back. Because if you just look at those rankings, a 91, a 90, and a few 89s, look at who's on this list. Isaiah Wacobia, Logan Parr, Kevin Jennings, the quarterback, Ahmad Moses, RJ Maryland, PJ Williams, a tackle, is an 86, and then you've got TJ Harden, an 85 running back. Now, TJ Harden isn't a returner, but all those other guys that I just named are. And it illustrates that the guys coming back are some dudes. And I don't have to convince you guys of it because I know you all watch the football. You all know that Isaiah Wacobia might be the best defender on this team. And combine him in the defensive backfield with Ahmad Moses, that's a really good dynamic duo at safety that you've got back there. Y'all don't need to tell me, I don't need to tell you that RJ Maryland can play some quality tight end. RJ Maryland, I think, by the way, could be first team all ACC at tight end. I believe in that dude that much. And then you've got the quarterback. But it's always refreshing when you can bring in outside people who have to go through the tape and dissect and peruse all of these different players and figure out what's going to be the appropriate rating for them. And they come out with that. And they come out with another entity that sees a lot of value in what SMU has returning. I think that is massive for the Mustangs. Now, again, Rhett Lashley and Kevin Jennings and Isaiah Wacobia and all those guys, they're not going to give a damn about their NCAA rating. Maybe they might. But as in the terms of how it parlays into football, they don't really care. But like Vegas not being that far off when it comes to their betting line, sometimes they are. But all of you know, and especially all of you who bet on this, hopefully you're betting with FanDuel, but most of you know Vegas ain't that far off. I do my same game parlays all the time. And I'll tell you what, whether I win or whether I lose, it's within 4 points or 4 whatever or such. And I think EA Sports, similarly to Vegas, if they're going to be off, it's not going to be by far. And if they're off below, that still means that those dudes are going to produce, because those are, I'll put it this way. Leader of the defense is a 91. I think Isaiah Wacobia is going to be one of the top 2 leaders on the defense. Elite pass protector, the quarterback, dude that flies around and can do multiple things, potentially top 2 receiver, anchor of the offensive line, could be RB1. Best pass rusher, Cameron Robinson. I haven't named him yet. When you just use those sort of descriptors, you can now see why there's a correlation between my thinking that SMU's got the right guys returning and EA Sports rankings. Because those dudes at the top of EA Sports rankings, which, by the way, the lowest ranked player that I just described there, Cam Robinson, the defensive end, is an 85. Now you start to see that a lot of people think this team is going to be pretty good. And a lot of people think that the guys returning, the anchors of this team, the anchors of a team that are still going to have their same continuity with their play callers and their head coach, you can start to see why there's value there. And then you can use your wildest imaginations to determine for yourself where you think that's going to go. Whether it's SMU's going back to the ACC championship, whether you think it's SMU's going to go back to the college football playoff, maybe even win a game in the college football playoff. But out of the 22 starters last year, 10 of them are gone. But a damn good 12 remain, as I just described. That's why you should get some excitement and get some good news about college football 2026 coming up and coming out. I don't know if you guys are avid video game players. I am. I'm going to be playing. Quite frankly, I'll probably play with SMU this year. I don't care. I know a lot of people are like, well, you can't do a dynasty with a Power 4 conference team. I don't. Go, okay, cool. Go do that yourself. I want to play with SMU. I'm a DFW kid, born and raised. I don't live there anymore, but born and raised DFW kid. I want to play with a college football team that's from where I'm from. Hell yeah, I do. So take that good news. That it's not just me telling you, hey, you got the right 12 coming back, because those dudes coming back are being highlighted by a lot more people. Well, speaking of good news, there is some bad news. Well, there's projected good news from one, and then there's projected bad news from somebody else. We'll tell you who that is. We'll go through the article coming up next. Stick here with us on Locked On SMU. Our show today is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. why not make it a little bit more thrilling with the chance to get a little bit more money? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are over here getting burned at the beach. It's easy to use, the payouts are fast, and that makes it even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, welcome back to Locked On SMU. And since you've made it this far, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, so you always get notifications every time our shows are going to premiere, so we can continue to grow this channel. Be sure to share this with all your friends in the SMU community. Okay, so I gave you the good news from one entity in the first segment. I'm going to give you the top 5 teams, according to Matthew Gibson at Yahoo Sports, that could disappoint in 2025. I'm pretty sure we can think of a couple of teams that could be on here. So the number 1 is Colorado. Number 2 is our ACC rival, Syracuse. Number 3 is an Indiana team that kind of came out of nowhere. Ohio State, interestingly enough, the defending national champions are in this list. And then you get to our SMU Mustangs. Here's what Yahoo Sports has to say. SMU made the leap in 2024, finishing 12-2 and earning a college football playoff berth. But now it's the hunted in an improved ACC. Rhett Lashley's Mustangs return even better and deeper, but their 2025 schedule is no joke. Unlike last year, this time around, they face Clemson and Miami in the regular season. Throw in dates against Baylor, Louisville, Syracuse, and TCU, and it'll be a huge lift to get back to the CFP. I think they're taking SMU a little bit. I think they're underrating what SMU has coming back. Now, they hit it on the head there that they're deeper. I do think they're deeper, and I think at those positions that they have back, those dudes are going to be even better. Like, imagine a better Isaiah Wacobia, a better Kevin Jennings, especially if he improves in the part of the game upstairs to go along with his physical talent. That's pretty dangerous. That's a dark horse Heisman Trophy candidate. An improved R.J. Maryland who continues to refine his game. Kind of like it. I kind of like it. But here's why I think Yahoo Sports hit something on the head. That schedule is wild. We talked about this. The schedule is wild. Clemson's on the road. Miami you get at home. Louisville you get at home. Baylor is at home. TCU on the road. Syracuse at home. This kind of makes me think that SMU is going to go back to the playoff. Because if they do what I think they're going to do, and if you listened a couple of days ago, my prevailing thought is that if SMU gets past the Miami game with 1 loss on the schedule, the back end of that schedule is so light that I think SMU is going back to the CFP. Couple that with the fact that they really haven't lost at home since Rhett Lashley took over, and you start to see the vision here. But Yahoo Sports just made the argument for why SMU can get back to the college football playoff. Because if they only lose 1 game in the regular season, if they don't go undefeated and beat Clemson too, that's a highly impressive resume. Because that's a daunting road. Because in the midst of all that, you will have a Miami team. You would have gone to Clemson on the first week of a back-to-back road trip on the East Coast. And your non-con schedule was dope. Your non-con schedule was a tour of North Central Texas. One of those games at home, one of them on the road. Stacks up pretty good. This is not an easy schedule. And yes, the rest of the ACC is tough. I think the ACC is going to be more improved. North Carolina is going to be interesting with Bill Belichick. I think Florida State will be better, but I don't know. As of right now, we have the last couple years of SMU, of Florida State, pardon me. The last couple years of Florida State have been gone undefeated, quarterback breaks his leg, and then we all throw a hissy fit and sue the college football playoff. The next year, they was a complete dumpster fire. And then this year, their new quarterback is a dude that's just saying all sorts of wild stuff. So I don't really know what Thomas Castellanos' mental makeup is going to be. Not to mention that he also got benched last year. We remember that. Georgia Tech, to me, is the wild card of the ACC, too. But while the rest of the ACC is improved, I do think SMU can be improved, too. And SMU was already better than those teams. Now you get to couple it with a no-doubter schedule. If a college football playoff committee looks at this schedule and sees SMU had one loss and made the ACC championship game, whether they lose it, whether they win that championship game or not, you would be very, very hard pressed to keep them out. That's one of those things where you're going to have beyond reasonable doubt to keep SMU out of the college football playoff. With this schedule, what would be disappointing? Is disappointing, according to Yahoo Sports, 3 losses? Because then you probably don't get into the CFP. And if you see, okay, there's 3 losses and we're coming off a CFP and we don't make it, then, okay, I guess that's disappointing. And maybe it is, especially with the expectations that I have been setting here on this show the last 4 days. Maybe that is. But that's the case for why they could be disappointing. But if the case for why you could be disappointed is because the schedule's tough, but in the same vein, you're saying that Rhett Lashley's Mustangs return even better and deeper, sounds like a team that's going to be pretty good. That sounds like a team that people should be confident that they're going to be back contending where they were a season ago because of the improvements that can be expected to be made year over year. And it's not like this is a team, because you can say, well, players always improve year over year. Fair. But you can kind of get a demerit here if you're a team that was all of a sudden reconstructed by the transfer portal. Not the case with SMU. They've been supplemented by the transfer portal. TJ Harding, Chris Johnson at running back, Zakai Barker at linebacker. But he's got Alex Kilgore next to him that's coming up. That is going to help him lead that defense. He's got Wacobia back there, safety, that's going to help him lead that defense. Supplementation by the portal is a good thing, but that core's been there. And if that core's going to continue to improve, look, man, that's the makings of a quality team. And if you're Yahoo Sports, sure, you made the argument for why SMU could disappoint some of its fans, especially those that think that SMU should get past the first round of the college football playoff. But you also made the case in the same time for why SMU should be returning to its level from a year ago. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to go through this schedule, and I think they're going to get past that Miami game with 1 loss. I hardly ever predict. You'll probably never see me ever predict undefeated. You're not going to see me predict perfection, because with the new way that college football is, with traveling across the country in ways that we really haven't before, and the fact that the sport is still football and dudes get hurt one way or another, whether they miss significant time or just miss a little bit of time, and the unpredictable nature of the game, you're never going to see me predict perfection. But do I think they can get through that schedule with 1 loss up until the ACC championship game? Absolutely. I 1,000% believe they can do that. 2 losses? I will bet a hefty sum on that. And 2 losses, by the way, if you lose 2 games in the regular season, that still might be good enough to get you to the ACC championship game. And then if you win it, boom, you're in. So there are multiple feasible routes for SMU to take to get back to the college football playoff. And I don't think that they're going to be a disappointment. And I think their schedule is only going to boost their resume and boost their chances of getting into the CFP. Coming up next, let's take a look at the first position group I want to highlight. We talked about Isaiah Wacobia a ton. We've mentioned him a ton in this show. And we're going to talk about the safety room and why I find this safety room particularly important to SMU as we head in to the 2025 season. Welcome back to Locked On SMU. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Be sure to share it with your friends. You can find me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. I'm Grayson Singleton. Thanks for spending part of your day with me as well. And thank you for being one of our everyday listeners. Let's start going through all the position rooms for the Mustangs heading into the 2025 season. And I want to start with the safety room because I think this safety room, unique to SMU, is one of the more important in the country. Usually when you go up and down the hierarchy of positional importance, you don't really get to safety at number one. And no, I don't think safety is number one, but I think safety is going to play a major, major role in how good SMU's defense is going to be, particularly because of continuity and experience. So I've already pointed out to you that I think Isaiah Wacobia is going to be, if not the leader of the defense, he'll be number 2 in command. Now, whether that's behind Zakai Barker, who could reasonably be assumed to be calling the signals from the field on defense, he'll be the one with the headset, maybe the green dot, maybe that's Alex Kilgore. But behind one of the linebackers, I think Isaiah Wacobia is going to be a major, major brain to the defense. And it's here that I like to step away from the physical traits and the physical playing football. I do this a lot with a lot of the teams I cover, even when I cover the University of Oklahoma. When you have guys who can be the brain of the defense, you cannot take that for granted. And with some of the things that SMU did lose on defense, by the way, they did lose some of that upstairs, whether it's at linebacker, whether it's at defensive end that they lost. But I think Isaiah Wacobia is a guy who could be the anchor, not just as a safety, but the anchor as a mind for this defense. Now, you pair him back there with Ahmad Moses, and I think you've got one of the best safety tandems in the country. I have no idea where that tandem ranks in terms of, EA Sports defensive backfields. But Ahmad Moses, I think, is a guy who could break out. He played in all 13, or let me retract that here. He played in all 13 games back in 2022 as a freshman. So a guy who's gotten a ton of burn ever since his freshman year. Last year as a junior, he started 4 games, and he had 73 tackles, 6 for loss. By the way, the 6 tackles for loss for Ahmad Moses were the most by a defensive back on the team. So Ahmad Moses, in terms of setting the table as a physical defensive back, there's your dude right there. And again, that is something that lends more intangibly as well, because if you have a guy who can set the tone, that sets the mindset for everybody, right? So that's how you have to have that guy back there. But between those two, that's a dynamic safety duo. And I think that that's going to pay huge dividends, because if you have a safety duo with the, not just the intangibles, but the other traits of those two, Moses and Wacobia, that can filter down to your defense. And there are other dudes coming back for this defense that should keep this defense very good. Again, I'll reiterate what I said yesterday as well on this topic. Do I think SMU is going to hold its opponents to 44 yards under that opponent's season average? No, that's a very hard thing to duplicate, and it's going to be a very hard thing to predict to duplicate too. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but I will go as far as to say I think they could be pretty close to it, because in large parts of those two, because I think those two are going to be dudes that fly around and take the ball away. By the way, you want to hear something about those two? They tied for the team lead in interceptions with 3 last year. So they're dudes that want to take the ball away. Moses added a forced fumble as well. They want to go get the ball. And all of that mindset coming from the back end of your defense is going to eventually permeate down to everybody else. It's going to make its way down. And I think a lot in especially in pro football, there's been a devaluing of the safety. But the way a guy like Scott Simmons can move safeties around, especially with a guy like Ahmad Moses, who can be physical in the box against the run, you can move him around to where somebody doesn't even know where he's going to be. And that could steal you 10 yards in field position or steal you a possession. And those are the little things that add up to the point where you get 44 yards under your season average in production on offense from an opponent. It's those little things, those little nuances that you can steal and flip in your favor that can add up to that. So that's why I think when I look at that safety room, and by the way, let me go back to the EA Sports rankings because you're going to like this. Rocket Rahimi, the senior safety, 6'1", 204. He's at 84, by the way. That's a very quality third safety. I don't know if you're aware about that, but if your third safety is rated like that, that is a good third safety to have, and Rocket Rahimi is a good player. So if all that said, and the leadership is there on one side, you've got traits and a mindset that can be passed down on the other side. That helps ease the transition, especially at linebacker, with a new linebacker coming in with Zakai Barker. That can help smooth all that out. When those two dudes back there who can see everything and make checks, they've been in Coach Simmons' scheme. I like the dynamic of that going down. Because in the world of transfer portal, I'll end on this. In the world of the transfer portal and a lot of upheaval and change, sometimes that reaches the leadership top. And I don't think it's reached that here with this SMU defense. Because the defense bought the offense a lot last year. They were able to give the offense a few mulligans in certain games, especially when they made the transition from Stone to Jennings at quarterback. But if you lose dudes, but you keep dudes who can be leaders, you're in position to do the same again. And with Jennings now in his first full season as the dude, the offense may not need all of those mulligans. The offense might just be in position to capitalize on the ones the defense gives them. And that's how you duplicate a season like SMU had in 2025. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Locked On SMU. Thank you for making us your first listen today. Be sure to check out next, The Portal, our Locked On The Portal show. It's your second listen with Brian Smith. He's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. So be the most informed fan on the rapid changes going on in the world of college football. Find The Portal on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to like and subscribe to this Locked On SMU page. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to continue our series as we look into another position group. You'll find out what position group that is tomorrow as we have one more episode of Locked On SMU for the week. I'm Grayson Singleton. We'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy, everybody.